Take a Break, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Keeping my options open might be one of the most disgusting phrases, concepts one can encounter in this life. The narcissism, using of people as stepping stones, and general cowardice that all make up this, yes, cowardly practice, is nauseating and borders on sociopathy.
Listen, Jeff, I just need to find myself. I have so much living to do, and, well, let's be honest. What we've been doing is boring. Let's just call it a break. We'll see what my next few international work trips bring, and in a year, maybe two, we'll go from there. We'll re-meet each other. You have to understand that I have to keep my options open. I need a clean break to live. Be alive.
What an odd thing to be echoing in Gina's mind as she lay in an ever-cooling barrage of water and an ever-growing pool of her own blood. That's what she had said to Jeff almost 3 months ago to the day. After 3 years together that were, and she did have to admit it, joyous, and by far the healthiest relationship she'd had with any man, she had been given a promotion at work. This promotion would actually see her making less money, but it would also see her traveling the world. She'd been jet-setting with the best and the brightest in the business world, and in style, making up for her drop in pay. Her main countries of influence in her new position with the firm were Australia, New Zealand, Greece, Italy, France, and Spain. She had drawn the two markets that everyone fought for. That's right, she, Jenna Infram, would basically be paid to vacation. Consultation on business ethics wasn't exactly demanding. Moreover, her expertise in company benefits in regards to children and on-site children's services meant that she was often finished with her assignments and or use for various companies and their HR and legal departments in 1/10 of the time her bosses seemed to think it might take her. Upon receiving the news then, she knew she simply couldn't allow herself not to take the opportunity for one last year to 2 years' worth of whirlwind living. Yes, she was well past her get blitzed and get fucked by some anonymous bull days. It was about time for her to fully embrace adulthood after all, but again, this was just too much to pass up. She thought of all the wild nights, all the photos to be envied by her friends and coworkers, all the shifting from a life that was too real. Her travels with the firm would mean there would be no insurance renewals, monthly bills to pay, house upkeep, office ins and outs, visits to her family, visits to his family, cleaning. All of this and more would disappear. The firm taking care of some of it, and some of it just ceasing to exist the moment she walked away from this burdensome life. Jeff, of course, had not taken the news well. Tears, blubbering, the whole shebang. She humored him with a warm ear but a cold shoulder. She couldn't have their mutual friends judging her for the why behind her decisions. This run with the firm would only be a year or two long, and she couldn't burn all her bridges. So, she put in minimal effort to give Jeff the time to lose his shit, and then she was off. Her first trip had been to New Zealand. It had been amazing. She had lived every cliche she could possibly squish into a month-long period of popping about the country. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, tourist traps, adventure touring. Gina did it all. Her second trip was to hop on over to Australia. It had also been wonderful. She had lived every cliche she possibly could squish into a 2-month-long period this time. far greater qualities and quantities of sex, drugs, rock and roll, tourist traps, adventure touring. Gina continued to do it all. After her Oceania region consultations, she flew to LA for debriefs and a reset in the company's line toward customers. Apparently, Oceania's product concepts were much different than those of the Mediterranean and Europe. Gina had a week of learning what to say, what not to say, and how to say both before she was off on her second trip to Greece. Almost 4 months in, and she was feeling like a rock star, Jeff did not cross her mind once. Not ever. This first extended trip to Greece started rough, though. Gina should have known that this was an omen. Apparently, her company's contacts were not in Athens proper, so upon touching down in the ancient metropolis, she was quickly ushered into a less than glamorous, banged-up SUV that took her to nearby Akarnas. The suburb was full of 3-star hotels and was all but devoid of the nightlife that fed the appetites to which Gina had become accustomed to feeding. Still, she reminded herself again just how much better this all was than being shackled to an everyday, mundane adult life back in the US. At the end of the day of travel, all she wanted to do was wash the grime off of her and get some sleep before her presentations tomorrow. Once those were out of the way, there'd be far more time to head back into Athens and find some Greek men and ouzo to make this month start turning around really quickly. With those future forays into unshackled fun fresh in the front of her mind and fluttering on her lips, Gina started the shower, allowing it to heat up, and began to undress. She always loved to run the shower until the steam made the air thick and too warm for most. She tossed her traveling clothes on the floor, loving that there was no one there that she needed to worry about putting out or off by leaving such a mess, and she went to take her long-awaited shower. Gina tested the water again with her hand, making sure that the water was just on the other edge of uncomfortably hot. Vivid visions of what Greece might hold in store were streaming through her mind as she stepped lightly into the tub. Tired or not, she might make this shower a little more interesting. Then, confusion. She'd stepped in with her left foot. She'd felt a real sinking feeling in her stomach. She'd heard a snap reminiscent of when she'd helped her father burn wood scraps from their yard, the sticks, twigs, and larger limbs cracking under the assault of the fire. She was lying down. She used to lie down in the shower when she was younger. She thought it was soothing, almost hypnotic. But then she did not do so in lukewarm water, and there was never blood around. What was going on? When she tried to sit up, pain rolled over her. She blinked heavy-lidded, taking an unmoving assessment. Gina realized she saw bone protruding from her right thigh. Blood was gushing from the hole where it was peeking out beyond her skin. The knee and thigh were at an angle that even her befuddled mind knew meant danger, meant pain. With the slightest tilt of her head left, she saw bone coming from her left arm, too. She must have fallen. She must have passed out. How long had she been down for? This was a lot of blood, and the water was far cooler than when she'd entered. She tried to get up once more before pain knocked her back into a prone position, threatening to make her black out. Gina called out for help. Her voice sounded weak, even to her. Over the shower, she doubted that anyone could hear her. She was getting extremely tired. She knew this was bad. If she went to sleep, she had no illusions that this meant she would die. The water would continue to cool. She would continue to bleed. The driver would report her as a no-show and go about his day in the morning. No one would think twice about it, her having ditched or rescheduled meetings to accommodate her new lifestyle before. It could be as long as 2, maybe 3 days before anyone might find her. Gina tried to pick herself up again. This time she pushed a foot or 2 off the tub before slipping again, falling backward and hitting the back of her head. Fireworks launched into her vision. She didn't black out, though. Still, Gina knew she was in real trouble. Her mind started to dance through everything that someone confronting their mortality generally thinks about. Family, childhood, past, fading future, mistakes, triumphs, religion. Unsummoned, Jeff came back to her for the first time in months. Jeff represented all of those things. He loved her family. He wanted her to be his family. He wanted to start a family. He had shared his childhood with her and showed genuine interest in hers. He had made her feel like a queen when they'd met. He had wanted to marry her. He had come to neglect her feelings. He had pushed her to be a better woman, always supporting her in all her efforts, even when the neglect came on. Save this last one, of course. He had grown up in the church, which gave him a charm and calmness that she'd not seen in other men and other friends. Jeff, uninvited, was there with her, comforting her as she began to drift closer and closer to unconsciousness. He was always there for her until she'd pushed him away. And even now, he was back. Their life together played before her eyes. Their life as it could have been played before her eyes. While her words to him, as she let him know she was discarding him, began to ping around as an accompaniment.
Listen, Jeff, I just need to find myself. I have so much living to do, and, well, let's be honest. What we've been doing is boring. Let's just call it a break. We'll see what my next few international work trips bring, and in a year, maybe 2, we'll go from there. We'll re-meet each other. You have to understand that I have to keep my options open. I need a clean break to live. Be alive. We'll re-meet each other. You have to understand that I have to keep my options open. Be alive. I need a clean break to live. Be alive.
Gina began to snicker, giggle, cackle. Her clean break had turned messy. Thank you for listening to Take a Break, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. All sounds that you hear present come from freesound.org and are being used under public domain licenses. Please stick around for the next installment of our novella that we've been exploring together. If you've not listened to the other chapters of Answer the Fire by Jack Lee, I suggest that you do so now. Alright, let's go over and rejoin Tilo and Nurse amid their flight from some ferocious flies. See you there!